What's up guys, you're watching TCG Fish, or pretty soon I might not be TCG Fish. I think I might rename the channel. Too close to MTG Goldfish. It looks like I'm being a bit derivative. I chose that name because, you know, fish is in my surname, and you know, fish, I'm really bad at playing cards. But yeah, so if you're looking at the name of the channel and it's not TCG Fish, I chose a different name instead. Anyway, I digress. So this week, you know, my usual weekly video, Pauper. So I've never played Pauper before. First foray into the format, I thought I'll just pick a deck that looks cool. You know, people are really getting hyped about this new format. Well, it's not a new format, but it's getting really popular lately at the side events of GPs, things like that. A few of the online content creators like Channel Fireball and stuff are getting more involved with it, it seems. So I just wanted to buy a deck and try it out. And of course the deck that I chose was one that really allowed me to flex my deck building chops. So this is Tortured Existence. So what this card does is it's sort of like a really wonky survival of the fittest. So it's an enchantment and you can pay black to activate it. You discard a creature, and then rather than get a creature from your deck into your hand, you get one from your graveyard back into your hand. So in some ways this is even better than survival, right? Because it only costs 1 to cast and you can never run out of the creature in your graveyard. You can always keep bringing it back, but you can run out of the copy in your library. Now obviously this is way worse than survival of the fittest, but it's still really strong. So you want to get into a late game situation where you have a lot of spare black mana, and then you can just generate a lot of value by recycling all your different creatures. And you want to play a lot of different utility guys that are good in different situations, and then maybe some self-mill cards to help you dig towards them. This is the kind of strategy we're going to be looking for. So I'm going to try and run through this very fast. The version that I'm playing is only green-black. Mana base, the boring part really quickly. 5 Forest, 4 Golgari Guildgate, 4 Jungle Hollow, 2 Evolving Wilds, 2 Golgari Rot Farm, and 7 Swamps. So one thing I will say is I'm not confident about this mana base at all. One of my weaknesses as a player is that I'm not very good at coming up with optimal mana bases on the fly. For new decks that I just make. This is something that I tend to figure out over many games of playing, just sort of by using my intuition. So for example, is this mix of basics correct? 7 swamps and 5 forests. Is Evolving Wilds correct? For example, we could also be playing more Foul Orchard over, in addition to Golgari Guildgate and Jungle Hollow. Or maybe that's too many. In fact, we shouldn't even be having all of these 8. Or should they just be swapped for Evolving Wilds? I mean, Evolving Wilds, the thing you find comes into play tapped and only makes 1 color, so maybe it's worse than Foul Orchard. But the basic you fetch is going to be better with a Rot Farm compared to a Foul Orchard. You know, there's a couple of cards in your main deck that care about having lands in your graveyard, so maybe Evolving Wilds is good. You know, these are all really weird things that you sort of have to consider. And there's no way I could figure it all out just in my head or like a pen and paper kind of way. So I just jammed a bunch of lands, in 24 lands, and it seems to work well. But we can expect some fine tuning going forward for sure. One thing I will say is that basic forests are quite bad because you want to be able to activate Tortured Existence a lot. So you want as much black mana as possible, and also you have Crypt Rats in your deck, which needs black mana to activate. So every land that only taps for green is potentially a liability. So that's an important thing to consider moving forward. So onto the spells. Of course we have 4 Tortured Existence. In multiples they don't do anything, right? Once you have 1, adding another one into play, that does nothing. It doesn't give you any capability in addition to the first one. But having 1 versus having none makes the deck play completely differently. Like you really want to draw it. So having 4, the maximum number, is a no-brainer. And of course your opponent can counter or destroy any copy at any time. So then you're going to need a backup. Of course you play 4. Next, the other spell for Commune with the Gods. So 2 mana sorcery, look at the top 5, any creature or enchantment there, you get to put it into your hand, and then the rest go to the graveyard. So of course enchantments are great to find because you want your Tortured Existence, that's an enchantment. Then you have a lot of different creatures in your deck because obviously creatures go with Tortured Existence. This also finds creatures, great. And then the rest of the cards go to the graveyard, so you can buy them back with Tortured Existence later. Just works perfectly in the deck. Another really similar card is Vessel of Nascency, but that's a lot worse. So it costs 3 mana to use in total rather than just 2, because you have to pay 1 to play it down first, and it digs 1 card less. So I think that's significantly worse. Enough worse that you don't need any copies, and 4 of this is correct. The only upside for Vessel of Nascency is that when you dig with it, it can hit another copy of itself, but I don't think that's really ever going to be relevant. So yeah, just 4 Commune, good enough. So onto the creatures. I'm going to sort of count down in terms of the number of copies that I'm playing of each of these. So the only creature that I'm playing 4 copies of is Putrid Leech. So for starters, I'm willing to admit that this might be totally wrong. So first of all, why is this the only creature I'm playing 4 copies of? When you're playing this deck, you have a lot of dredge cards which mill you. So if you want to be able to find an individual copy of any given creature, you don't need to be playing that many copies of it in your deck to eventually find one, right? So say you really need a Putrid Leech, and it's like in the middle of the game and you've probably dredged a bunch. Like if you have 2 Putrid Leeches in your graveyard, well that's cool, you can bring back 1. But then the other Putrid Leech, you would rather it would be like a completely different effect, like an artifact destruction card or something like that, right? And then you could still bring back the Putrid Leech, like you still have that, but then your other Putrid Leech could be something else that gives you a completely different angle. So there's maybe there's no reason to be playing 4 copies of maybe Putrid Leech or especially many other cards. So it's not a deck where you need to be playing play sets of things, because you're going to be able to mill into them even when you're playing fewer copies, and then you can just Tortured Existence them back, and then playing more copies of more different things gives you more flexibility, more gameplay choices to help you win the game, basically. So why are we playing 4 Putrid Leech then? So Putrid Leech is just the best 2-drop in black-green. Being able to be a 4/4 for just 2 mana is really, really strong. For example, there aren't many other 2-drops that can attack into Augur of Skulls and kill it. Imagine your opponent's attacking you with a Ninja of the Deep Hours. So if they try to bolt this, you can pump it in response, but otherwise you can just safely trade it off. And there aren't many other 2-drops that are safe from bolt and can trade with a Ninja. You know, these are just situations where Putrid Leech is great. So the reason why Putrid Leech might not be that good is that because this deck hardly ever wins games by being aggressive, normally you get really deep into the late game and you just get a ton of value with your Tortured Existence, and then you win the game with any random creature. Like, you're just going to be so far ahead in terms of card advantage that you can win the game with just a random 1/1. While you have other defensive things that are stopping your opponent from winning the game. So having a thing that can become a 2 mana 4/4, that is strong, and it's nice that you can have cards that are strong on their own, that they aren't dependent on Tortured Existence to work, because that's one of the ways this deck can fall apart, is if you don't draw the Tortured Existence and you have all these awkward clunky value combo pieces or situational cards, and you're just drawing really bad cards, your opponent's drawing strong cards. So it's nice to have your own strong cards like Putrid Leech. I'm just thinking that maybe this would be better as a more defensive card, because this deck seems like it might not utilize the offensive potential of this very well. So that's one of the things that I really want to hear about your guys' opinion in the comments. do you think this is a 4 of Putrid Leech deck? Regardless, I think it might still be correct to play at least one. Just the fact that it's green and black, so it blocks Guardian of the Guild Pact is quite funny. And like I said, it's just a strong card by itself, so it can't ever really be that bad. But playing all 4 might definitely be wrong. So moving on, now we're going down. Like I said, that's the only 4-drop. I mean, not 4-drop, 4 full playset. 3 copies, Golgari Brownscale. So this is a really sweet combo with the Tortured Existence. So when you have this going, like in the mid to late game, every turn you just dredge. So you gain 2 life from dredging, and then you guarantee that you drew a creature basically, and then you can pay black to rebuy whatever creature you want. So slowly your graveyard's getting more and more full. So each turn you're more likely to be able to find the creature that you need. You're gaining life, and you're basically drawing like the perfect card every turn. And then in the very late game, if you have a lot of lands, you can float all your extra mana into just returning these. So even if you only have 1 copy, you can pay black, discard it, return something, pay another black, discard the thing that you returned, return the Brownscale. So you paid 2 black mana and you just gain 2 life for free, basically. And then if you have multiples, like you have 1 Brownscale in your hand and 1 in your graveyard, you can do the same thing at twice the speed. So every black mana, you're swapping these and you're getting 2 life. And then aggressive decks just can't ever beat that. Like, how is a Delver deck supposed to beat you when you're gaining 6 life per turn and you're hiding behind some big spider? It's just impossible. So that's why you play 3, because they're not good to draw. It's just a 3 mana 2/3. It's nice that it blocks Ninja, but that's not anything to get too excited about. But even though you don't like drawing it, it is valuable to have access. You really want to see at least 1 copy every game, and they also get better in multiples because you can do the loop with 2. So 3 is a good number, I think. And that's the only card that we're playing 3 copies of, so everything else is either 2 copies or less. So the next thing, 2 copies now, 2 copies of Stinkweed Imp. So this is your other dredger. Dredge 5 rather than dredge 3, so it lets you dig deeper if you're trying to find a certain answer or a certain thing that you're looking for. And the fact that it has Death Touch Flier is also really valuable. So if your opponent has a strong threat, they don't want to attack into this until they find removal. That's giving you more time to develop your mana base, dredge into more creatures, get yourself towards that late game situation where you just dominate with Tortured Existence activations. So yeah, 2 copies of this card. 2 copies is like my rule of thumb for you really want to find 1 copy per game, but not more than that. If that's the kind of card that it is, then I think 2 copies is correct in this deck. So the other thing that's 2 copies, Fume Spitter. This is the best card against Tireless Tribe. It's really good against Spellstutter Sprite, Unflipped Delvers, things like that. And in the late game, if your opponent has bigger creatures, then you can keep reusing this over and over to shrink them down. You don't even have to kill their creatures outright. You just need to make them small enough so that your other blockers can deal with them if they need to. So yeah, this is a solid card. One of the weaknesses of this deck is because it's so late game oriented. You don't want to get run over early on, and having some sort of early removal can help with that quite a lot. Next, 2 copies of Crypt Rats. So Tortured Existence is probably, like, arguably the most powerful card in the deck, but you have to jump through a lot of hoops to make it work. As a standalone card, Crypt Rats is probably the most powerful card. So it gives you a lot of different valuable angles. So firstly, obviously what it does is it's a board wipe. So a lot of the times how games play out is you have many defensive creatures. So Stinkweed Imp is one example of that, but there are others in the deck. So what happens often is that you end up in these big board stalls where your opponent has a ton of creatures, you have a ton of creatures, nobody has any profitable attack, and then you can just deploy Crypt Rats, wipe everything, and then you can rebuild so much better because you have Tortured Existence. So that's one powerful aspect of this card. And the other is that it deals damage to the opponent's face, right? You can just pay all your black mana into it and smork them. And because you have the Brownscale, and you're in your mid game, you're basically dredging that every turn, so you're gaining 2 life every turn. You often end up in situations where you're like double ahead of your opponent's life. So Crypt Rats can just be a really effective win condition as well as removal. So again, it's one of those cards where you want to see 1 copy, but you don't need to see more. But this is one card I could maybe see adding 1 more copy, just because it's so powerful on its own. And the other 2 ofs, okay, only 1 more 2 of. So I did play 2 Caustic Caterpillars, and I think this is probably wrong. It's too greedy. So there are decks where this is good against in Pauper. There are a lot of weird artifact and enchantment decks. So there's a hexproof deck, there's a heroic deck, there's an affinity deck, there's weird combo decks with Jace's Erasure. A lot of the times you do have a target for this. Like even the non-linear decks, like the control decks, they can be playing things like Oblivion Rings as removal, like Journey to Nowhere. So it's really not uncommon to have a target for your Caterpillar. But the problem is that there are other matchups where it just does nothing. And my heuristic, my feel based on the games that I've played, is that you can beat a Journey to Nowhere even if you can't kill it, right? Like it's not like it's like game over when your opponent plays Journey to Nowhere on your Stinkweed Imp or whatever. Like that's not ever going to be a thing that happens. But if your opponent plays a Delver of Secrets and they flip it, and then all you have is a 1/1, you know, then that really can make you lose the game. So I think what you sort of have to do is lean towards beating those weird decks just with your sideboard cards, and sort of tune the deck to just be more like overall solid, powerful in its game 1 state. I still think it's nice to have some kind of artifact enchantment removal main deck. I think what might be correct is actually cutting both of those and playing 1 Wickerbough Elder instead, which is something that I thought about as I was putting this together, but I always assumed it was uncommon. So just because it's a bigger body means that it might be just, you know, a bit better than a 1/1 1/1, and also combos nicely with Fume Spitter, which is quite cute as well. So yeah, maybe these main deck are wrong. Let's keep that in mind. And the rest of the deck, which is the fun part about it, is it's all 1/0s. Again, some of these might be wrong. I'm not saying this is perfect, and I'm 100% behind all of it, but let's quickly go through some of these. So, Spore Frog, you sack it and it fogs. When you can return this card every turn easily, some decks just can't beat that. So there you go. And even against the decks that can, it often puts your opponent in really awkward spots. Being able to guarantee your opponent can't steal the Monarch from you is really strong. Even just blocking like a, what is it called? The Ninja Trigger. I'm gonna be a bit careful saying Ninja Trigger. We might end up with another Maximilian Dude scenario on our hands. If you don't get that reference, then don't worry about it. But yeah, so I've got to watch out for those ninja triggers. Yeah, so this is a really good card. I play another one on the sideboard as well because in some matchups your most reliable win condition is just Frog locking them out. But it has the Caustic Caterpillar problem of being really weak by itself in the matchups where it's bad. So I think 1 copy main deck is correct. Next, we have the Spider Crew. So I play 3 spiders. 1 Penumbra Spider, 1 Deadly Recluse, 1 Swift Spinner. So Penumbra Spider, everything in the Delver deck has 2 toughness or less. So Penumbra Spider eats all of it. Penumbra Spider can't be bolted, So the only thing that the Delver deck has, or at least the blue-red version, that trades with us on a 1-for-1 basis is Scred, which is neat, or I guess or counterspell, but assuming it resolves, so you know, they can Scred it away, but then it just makes another giant spider. In the Delver matchup, this is definitely one of the best cards. It's just so, they have to work so hard to get around it. Deadly Recluse is basically like the same idea, just on a better mana curve, and it can trade into like Gourmet Anglers and things like that as well. So in the discussion I was having before, you know, like, is Putrid Leech correct, or is that being too aggressive? Like, this is the kind of card that I would play instead of Putrid Leech. That's the kind of direction I'm thinking. One thing I just remembered in the discussion about Crypt Rats, one strong thing about Putrid Leech is that often 4 toughness is like the biggest thing on the battlefield. It's relatively uncommon that your opponent will have creatures that have 4 toughness or higher. So the fact that Putrid Leech is a 2-drop that lives through Crypt Rats activation for 3 is a positive thing about this card. But again, as I was saying, maybe it's the wrong plan for this deck. Maybe more defensive things are where you need to be. And then Swift Spinner was my own idea. Obviously, who else would ever consider playing these pieces of junk? Anyway, I just thought it was really funny. Like, the first time I played this card, I ambushed a Mole Drifter and I felt like a genius. But the fact that it's 3 toughness, so it gets bolted, and it dies when it blocks a Delver, is not exciting. So the one nice thing about this is it has Flash, which puts your opponent in some weird situations where, like, you have this in your graveyard and your opponent can see that if they attack you could return it and then block, so that maybe they decide not to attack, but then you can get your value out of your Tortured Existence by doing something else with it instead. So that's kind of nice, but overall I just think this card is not strong enough for how much mana that it costs. Maybe if it was a 3-drop it would be worth considering, but probably cut this going forward. These are fine, and you can even consider playing 2 Penumbra Spiders. Next we have some like card advantage value creatures. So, okay, firstly the ones that disrupt your opponent. So we have 1 Mesmeric Fiend, 1 Augur of Skulls. So this is just like a Mind Rot. In matchups where your opponents don't play much to the board and all their resources are in their hand, you just Mind Rot them every turn until they have no cards left, while you're slowly building up your mana to grind them out with Tortured Existence. Really strong, nice being able to have that game plan just by having one of these, and then in the matchups your opponents do deploy things to the board, you have a guy that can like block forever, just keep regenerating. So this is like the perfect one of. I can't imagine ever cutting this card. Mesmeric Fiend, on the other hand, I don't think is the right fit. It's not that it's the wrong fit for the deck, it's just that it's the wrong fit for Pauper. Like, there's no opponent where like you Mesmeric Fiend them, then they're like, oh no, I can't win. You know, they took away my key combo thing, and now you're killing me quickly with Putrid Leech or whatever. You know, like, that's the other problem with Putrid Leech, is that the rest of the deck isn't aggressive. So even if you are like quickly racing them down with your Putrid Leech, it's really not that quick at all when your rest of your creatures are like 1/1s. And then the other problem with this card is that you take one thing and for a few turns, and then later on you have to activate your Crypt Rats, or you want to activate your Crypt Rats because you want to wipe all your guys, and now your Mesmeric Fiend is dead and they get their thing back anyway. You can do the trick by, you know, you play this and then with the trigger on the stack, for example, you shoot it with Fume Spitter, and you get to exile the card forever. It's just not very good, you know, that's like paying 3 mana to duress your opponent. You look clever, but it's just a doomfall, you know, it's not anything to get excited about. Probably I wouldn't play this card going forward, it's just not good enough. Next we have cards that add value for you. So we have Sanitarium Skeleton and Grave Scrabbler. So these cards both do a sort of similar thing, right? If you have Tortured Existence online, this is how you get card advantage out of it. So the way these two cards sort of compare, this is really expensive, 3 mana to bring it back every time. But when after you've got your value out of it, it goes back into your graveyard, and then as soon as you have mana, you can activate it again and keep getting value. But whereas this, it's more efficient because you can figure just figure this out yourself. Imagine you have a bunch of swamps and a Tortured Existence, and your graveyard is you have no cards in hand, and your graveyard is this Brownscale and 2 cool spiders that you want, or you have the 2 cool spiders, a Brownscale, and this, and you see how much mana it costs you and what you end up with in play after you bring back your 2 spiders. So that will give you a sort of idea about how these cards work. So this is the clunkiest lower one, but after you get the value out of it, it goes back into your grave, and you can keep getting the value as many times as you want. Whereas with this, it's less mana to bring back multiple creatures, and it even comes with a free 2/2 creature. But after you get that, your 2/2 creature is stuck on the battlefield. And if you want to keep generating more cards, then you can't, right? Because it's in play, it's not in your graveyard anymore, you can't bring it back with Tortured Existence. So, of course, you can just attack, and then your opponent can take 2 damage if they don't want to put it in your graveyard. But they might just have an Augur of Skulls, in which case it doesn't die. So these both have their pros and cons. Definitely play 1 copy of this, I think. With this one, I'm less sure about how many copies are supposed to be in the deck. It's nice when you do have it, when Tortured Existence is online. If Tortured Existence is online, do you really need that kind of help? It's a little bit sketchy, not too sure. Because when you don't have Tortured Existence online, this is just a 4 mana 2/2 vanilla. Like, you don't even get the Gravedigger effect if you cast it from your hand. So you got to be a little bit careful about the way you build your deck. How hard are you leaning on Tortured Existence? So the next, we have more things that put cards into your hand. So these are cards that add lands. One sort of problem, quote unquote, with this deck is that in the mid game, every turn you want to dredge a Brownscale. So you'll never draw any more lands unless you take a turn off dredging and you draw a card and then you hope you draw a land. But imagine you do that and you draw another creature, well then you just wish you dredged a Brownscale instead, basically, because you could have moved it into the graveyard and you would have gained 2 life. So having cards like this enable you to keep that continuous dredge plan going, but at any point where you decide, okay, my opponent's not pressuring me much, I've set up my defenses, now I can develop my mana more so I can prepare myself for that late game situation. Rather than just saying okay, well, I'll stop dredging and start drawing cards hoping to find some lands. Instead, you can keep dredging, but you exchange your Brownscale for one of these, so you keep developing your mana. Tilling Treefolk, there's no other card that returns 2 lands. It's just a lot of value for your 3-drop. I don't think this is really replaceable, as long as you think the game's situation I just described is something that comes up and frequently enough, then Tilling Treefolk will always be good. Gatecreeper Vine is fine. Having the Find a Land guy for only 2 mana is a valuable effect. I think maybe this should just be Sakura Tribe Elder. Being an O2 isn't necessarily that useful. If it had reach, then maybe that would be really good. But maybe this should just be Sakura Tribe Elder. We have 1 Thorn of the Black Rose. So against opponents' decks that can make themselves the Monarch, having a way to make you the Monarch without attacking is nice. And against opponents that don't attack you much, being able to make yourself the Monarch is nice, because it's just like a free Phyrexian arena. And of course, in the late game, even if your opponent is a deck that wants to attack you, often you have all your defenses set up, and it's very hard for them to do so. So this can provide you a lot of advantage. So you only play one copy because it's not effective with multiples, and 4 mana is a lot. But this is a very powerful slot. I would never think about cutting this card. So then the last 2 cards are attackers. So 1, Horror of the Broken Lands. This card on the surface, it seems very strong. So 5 mana 4/4. Every time you activate Tortured Existence, it gets +2/+1. So in the late game, you might have like 5 lands in play that can all tap for black. So you just activate your Tortured Existence 5 times. You gain 10 life because you return to Brownscale every time you did that, and then you attack your opponent for 14, right? So that seems really strong. But the thing is that if you're in that kind of late game situation, for example, you could have just like returned to Crypt Rats and wiped all your opponent's guys, and then returned a Putrid Leech and just killed your opponent with that instead. Like I would say there's no situation where this is needed or is good, but like it doesn't come up that often. So the reason why I still play this card is because it just cycles for 1 mana. So even if you don't have Tortured Existence online, and it's like early in the game where you're nowhere close to casting this card, you can just cycle it for cheap and exchange it for something else. So the floor on this card can only ever be so low that I just keep playing it from now. But it might be the case that it's actually correct not to bother with this. And the last card was a bit of Google foo that I managed. So this is 1 Frightcrawler. So what this does is it's a 2 mana 1/1 fear. If you have Threshold, it gets +2/+2 and can't block. So the way that this deck tends to work is you have so many defensive cards. You know, you have the Death Touch Assassin that makes you the Monarch, you have your Death Touch Imps, you have your Death Touch Spiders, you have all these spiders that have really high toughness. You have the Frog, right? So you often end up in situations where nobody wants to attack. And especially if one player is the Monarch and it's not you, that's a really bad situation to be in. So having a guy that has fear is extremely valuable in those situations. You can always just play it down, no matter how many Spirit tokens or Core Skyfish or whatever, you can always make yourself the Monarch. Even if your opponent has infinite Augur of Skulls, you can always still put them under some pressure. I've been continually impressed with the decision to play 1 card that's just an evasive attacker. Another option for this slot is maybe Blind Zealot. I think that's also a reasonable choice. But the 3 power for 2 mana, I just think it's nice. It complements the like sort of ragtag aggressive plan of the Putrid Leech quite well. So yeah, I think the card slot on like evasive attacker is worth using. So that's the whole main deck. I'll go to the sideboard quickly. I remember this. It's worth remembering. I just sort of threw this deck together really fast, just based off theory crafting with no testing. Like I've probably played less than 10 matches of Pauper in my entire life. So you know, everything I say, take with a grain of salt. I really want to hear your feedback on all my thought processes. But I did have a sideboard. Anyway, so I have 4 Tainted Well. So this is like a 3 mana black Spreading Seas, because I heard that Tron was a deck in the format, sadly. That's never a good sign. But there is a black Molten Rain that exists. I think it's called Choking Sands. That card is probably slightly better versus Crop Rotation. But I think this is a better card overall against Tron specifically, when you're trying to cut them off the Tron. And additionally, because it's an enchantment, you can find it with the Commune with the Gods. I don't know where I put the Commune with the Gods. I've lost them. Okay, but anyway, yeah, so you can find it with that. So it seemed like this was a valuable decision. But then I've never even played against Tron. Like, I don't know if this is even good. I don't know if you need the help. But of course, you know, I play Modern, so we hate Tron. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. Moving on to Faerie Macabre. Going into like a format you don't know much about, just as a hedge, it seems fine to play some Graveyard Hate. I guess in the mirror is probably quite good, and against that weird Jace's Ingenuity combo deck, the version with the Ethereum Sculptor, you know, you might think you're smart leaving up your Caustic Caterpillar, but then they Giga Drowse your whole board and then they go off. So it's nice to have a way to interact that doesn't cost any mana to use. But again, this card's quite narrow. Maybe one of is good against like a Mystical Teachings deck, but I don't know how necessary these Faerie Macabres are for the sideboard either. One Heartstabber Mosquito. Somebody get Patrick Sullivan on the phone. My Chupacabra has flying. Yeah, so 7 mana to kill a dude is a lot. So the idea behind this was it's for heroic, because they can put so many +1 counters on the guy that you know, you can't even kill it with a Crypt Rats or with a Fume Spitter. You know, it's going to take you forever. You're going to have to bring it back like 20 times. But you know, you can just play Mosquito and shoot it down. And then against Tron, I thought maybe like they play Ulamog and then you untap and you Mosquito it. But in the end, I just don't think this is it's not very good. You know, like 3 mana for a 7 mana for a Shriekmaw or a Chupacabra, even if it does have flying, there's a lot. And you know, those heroic decks, you can beat them by Spore Frog looping. Against like a Ulamog's Crusher, you can just let it attack you, sacrifice 2 random creatures, and then block it with a Death Touch Spider or a Stinkweed Imp and kill it. I think your sideboard slots are better used elsewhere, so maybe an okay idea, but not really needed. More of these, just in the matchups where they're good. You know, like against the linear attacking decks like Hexproof and stuff, Spore Frog is great. Against like Affinity and things like that, Crypt Rats is good. And like I said, you could play 3 of this main deck and that would also be fine. Versus the Delver decks, Penumbra Spider is the best. This is also nice against Delver, and as I said, I think before, Fume Spitter is the best card against Tireless Tribe, so that's nice to have more copies of that too. Then 2 Deadweights, so these are kind of like the same slots as the Fume Spitter, but better against Delver and other aggressive decks because it's kills 2 toughness things instead of just 1. So like the Ninja or Flip Delvers or like a Muscle Sliver or something, this is the best removal, I think. And then the last 2 cards are 2 Quagmire Druid. So this is another nice bit of deck building ingenuity by me. I think I haven't really seen anybody else try to play this card before. So what it does is it's a 3 mana 2/2 green and tap, destroy target enchantment. So as I keep saying, there's a lot of weird enchantments. Like I've seen the heroic deck, the hexproof deck, the Jace's Ingenuity deck. I've seen a Presence of Gone deck. In the mirror, whoever has the Tortured Existence dominance is possibly winning, so it seems pretty good there as well. Yeah, I was happy with playing 2 copies of this, and I'll probably continue to do that going forward. Yeah, so that's it. So my overall impression of the deck versus slow control decks, you beat them with Tortured Existence. They can't deal with the infinite card advantage when you combine it with like the Skeleton and the Grave Scrabbler and things like that. Against Delver, it's like quite close. You know, it's like a real tightrope kind of game. Like if they get a fast start, or if like you try and get a spider down and it gets counterspelled while you're behind on the board, things like that, you can get behind really quickly. Or you know, sometimes you just play the spider and then they can't kill it, and then from there you just start gaining 2 life a turn, and then you get ahead. But you know, there's lots of interesting decisions to be made in that matchup. Like imagine you just block a ninja with your Putrid Leech. Like if you have the soul read that your opponent doesn't have a bolt, then you can pump it, right? And then your leech will live and their ninja will die. But you know, if they do have a bolt and you pump for 4 damage, then they bolt in response, and now you're really behind. So in general, probably you should just let them trade. But you know, there's levels to this. This is a very potentially interesting gameplay spot. So I really like playing against the Delver decks. You know, obviously you probably knew that already, right? Because I'm a bit of a legacy player, so those are the kind of situations I'm familiar with and I enjoy. But yeah, Pauper's really cool. The fact that these kind of matchups can exist. So the Delver's like a roughly even, I think. The weird combo decks probably favored game 1, but I think you have enough answers. You know, you can build into them with your Stinkweed Imp that you can find them quickly, that it's possible to beat a lot of the weird like linear / combo decks after sideboarding. So I think those matches are like close or slightly in your favor as well. Versus Tron, I have no idea because I've never played against it. It doesn't seem unwinnable, you know, when they don't have like Khan and Ugin and real Ulamog, they only have Ulamog's Crusher. But you know, there might be something I'm missing there. That you know, because you know these matchups tend to go really late. So if there's some like Trump that I'm not thinking about, that can swing the whole match. So forget about the Tron matchup. I have no idea. The worst matchups I think are like straight up aggro, because you have a bit too many like slow value cards and hardly any removal. So for example, in the last game I played, the most recent game I played, it was against the Sliver deck. And they have so many lords, like there's 4 2-mana lords that give all slivers +1/+1 at common, and then there's another one that's a 1-mana lord, I think, and it gives all the slivers an extra toughness boost. So every turn it's like, oh yes, I played a swamp, my Crypt Rats activation is going to be 1 bigger, I'm going to kill his whole board, and then he just plays 1 more lord and attacks you for even more damage. And now Crypt Rats can't even kill them, and your deadweight can't kill them either, and your Fume Spitter is useless, and now you just have to hope that Spore Frog wins you the game because you're about to die, and you don't have Tortured Existence yet, and you know it's just a nightmare. So any matchup like this, I feel like it's probably going to be really hard, and that's part of the reason why I think you need to shy away from cards like Mesmeric Fiend. I think you need to shy away from cards like this in your main deck. You know, you just play more solid creatures, more removal, and beat the weird decks with your sideboard. I think that's the philosophy I think I would aim for. So that's my take on Pauper on this deck. So your guys' homework assignment for this week, 4 Putrid Leech, what's that about? Is that smart? Is that dumb? Let me know. Next thing, the lands, was that right? You saw it all before. Anyway, the list is in the description, you can check it out. Let me know, is this too many lands, is it too few? Should there be different lands? Should I be playing different colors? That's something I didn't talk about at all, but you can possibly play a splash. There's another version I've seen where it actually doesn't have any green mana at all. It still plays Brownscale for the Tortured Existence value, but it never plans to cast any green card. It was only red-black. I thought the green cards were too good, so I like this version, but that version also looks quite strong because it has more better spells like bolts, and I think it had Chainer's Edict as well. So that's something to think about, or just play black-green like with a splash. Some people have suggested white for like Auramancer and stuff. So the Putrid Leech, the lands, and then someone give me the rundown on the Tron matchup. Like, is this necessary? Is this good? how the games play out versus that deck. It'd be cool if somebody could comment and give me any thoughts on that matchup before I run into it in the tournament, have no idea what to do. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that. Pauper seems really cool. I'm definitely keen to play some more. It's so nice that, like, when you think, oh, that's a cool card, I wish I could play. You know, is it going to be difficult for me to try this out? No, it's only 20 cents or whatever. You know, that's a bit of a nice surprise sometimes when you're used to the prices in Legacy and Modern. Yeah, so big fan of Pauper. Hope you guys like it too. Hope you guys like the video. Like, subscribe, all that good shit. TCG Fish, or maybe TCG something else. Signing out.